What's up, Browns fans? Week 8 is upon us. Browns, Patriots coming up down the pike here on Sunday as we get you ready an inch closer and closer to kickoff between the two AFC foes. Spencer German, Anthony Moeglin with you for our usual weekly conversation here at Cleveland Browns Roundtable. I do want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, head on over to roundtable.io/sports/NFL/Browns. You see it on the scroll at the bottom there if you need help with spelling any of that.
I got news for you.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to hear the news, but real quick, let me do my plug. Join the network. Join the site. We have our community post there throughout the week and during the game where you can jump in and participate in the conversation. Our feature content, some really good stories up there that you can follow along with as well. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel as well. We got you covered with all things Cleveland Browns all the time, week after week. And we're excited to have these conversations with you each and every single day. We got a lot to get into. Dillon Gabriel, the matchup with the Patriots, Mike Vrabel versus Kevin Stefanski. But Meg said he has news. What's the news, Megs?
I've heard from a credible source that it's shrinking. Our link is going to be shrinking. I've heard from credible sources. I've heard from credible sources before about the same topic, but I'm willing to put my name on this one that the link will be shrinking and it's going to look normal here sooner rather.
What does normal mean? Is it just like
it's going to be like some form of brownsroundtable.com like that? Like boom, okay. Easy to search, and most importantly for all of our fans out there, keep searching for us on Yahoo Sports. You'll start seeing our stuff popping up on Yahoo and on Apple News as well. So appreciate all the support to this point. It's been a lot of fun watching our channels grow. Make sure you're always interacting, always following along with all of us at Roundtable.
I like that. That is some good news. Best news of the day, really. We'll see if that happens.
Hey, if that's the best news of the day, you're having one hell of a day.
At least until Myles Garrett talks. We'll see what he has to say. But no, Megs, listen, I think there's a lot of different sort of things to talk about with this matchup. It's an interesting one. I think, honestly, I do think a natural starting place, though, does kind of feel like the Kevin Stefanski, Mike Vrabel dynamics that are sort of in play here. Not that, I mean, it's a weird situation because I don't think Mike Vrabel was ever brought in last year with any sort of thought that he would replace Kevin Stefanski. I just don't think that was in the cards. I don't think anybody was talking about that. I shouldn't say nobody was talking about it, but like internally, I don't think that was ever something they cared about. Mm-hmm. And Kevin, credit to him, like he was comfortable enough in his own skin that it was like, I don't care that I'm bringing this guy in that's like a highly touted coaching candidate out there in the NFL to be in our building when I'm still here. And I think Mike Vrabel's a great coach, so I respect that. But there was at least a vocal minority of fans that felt, hey, this season ends. Don't let that guy leave the building. Like they wanted him to maybe be the coach and take over for Stefanski even last year. And I think that the win over Miami sort of quieted some of that for this week at least, right? Like we haven't had to have that conversation that we spent pretty much the entire week talking about last week about him being on the hot seat and whatnot. I don't know if like losing the Patriots means it like is at the forefront of the conversations again, but I do think if Mike Vrabel like runs circles around Kevin Stefanski, I think it will be a pretty prominent thing that fans point to and bring up. Because like, I just don't think it can be ugly. Like if you lose, you lose. People know this team's not that good. But if you lose ugly and it's like the Patriots just absolutely, obliterate you and it looks like Kevin Stefanski's getting out coached, I think that's where you'll hear some of the chatter about, I can't believe we let Mike Vrabel out of the building. They should have picked him as the coach. And then I think that whole hot seat talk really does sort of become the most prominent thing people are talking about during the bye week next week.
Do you think like other franchises, other teams have like this much drama around them? Like feels like every damn week we get on this show and it's like there's some looming black storm cloud hanging over.
And his name's Deshaun Watson.
Well, there's that. There's I mean, shit. There's this one specifically. Like, hey, if they go out on Sunday and get thumped, everybody is going to be like, yeah, should have kept Vrabel. Like, it feels like everywhere we look, every game you play, there's something on there's like another shoe, and it's not even another shoe, it's like another boulder waiting to drop. If it goes right. I mean, like, look, like, yeah, it's I would love to know like what Vrabel's role was last year, because like when you talked about it,
I can tell you to a degree. I mean, he was a consultant like with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. I think a lot of it was for him too, to like learn some of the personnel decision type stuff, because that wasn't something he was doing in Tennessee. But I also think we know that at the end of the season he was coaching the offensive line, because everything was such a disaster with Andy Dickerson that he ended up kind of taking over that group, and that has been reported, told to us, like players mentioned that. So like I think that is notable. I don't know if I'll say this. I don't know if I lean in or if I buy into the whole like, oh, he knows all your secrets.
No,
well,
okay.
Like
no.
I know that that's a thing, and I know that these coaches are very protective over like every little detail of like everything that they do at practice and whatnot. So I'm sure he does know some things, but can I be honest with you, Megs? Like, what secrets is this offense hiding? Like this offense is this offense is like butt ass naked. Like we know what this offense is. It's like we're sitting there looking at it, and we're like, this thing's pretty bad. Okay, well, like there's no secrets from this offense. Like, let's be real.
But it's less of that and more of, okay, so what Mike Vrabel does know is, what the Browns call a single back, one tight end attached, one receiver to the left and one to the right. Like, that's what he knows, that they call it I right. But also, guess what? They watch it on film. And so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sure, he probably understands Kevin's maybe some tendencies, like, hey, Kevin likes to do this on third and shorts, or this on third and longs. Well, guess what? They also have access and I promise you this, I have friends who coach in the NFL. They are required to watch like 5 years worth of tape and to gather so much information that it doesn't matter that Mike Vrabel knows what Kevin Stefanski calls I right, or shotgun left, or doubles left, or trips right. They know what the tendencies are based on what the past and what the history has told them. That part to me doesn't bother me at all. I like, just curious. I remember when he was on Pardon My Take last year, he's like, yeah, I don't even have, like, I'm not even on the sidelines during games. He's like, yeah, on the home games, like, I may take my sons and, we may go tailgate in the muni lot and then go sit in the club section. Like, wait a second, you're like seeing these games as a fan, but like you're also in the building, and like, I don't know, it all just kind of felt odd last year. But no, nice. It's really exciting that if the Browns lose, all of Browns Nation is going to be talking about, hey, we should have kept Vrabel, and that's going to be the storyline next week, which will be certainly I'm sure a ton of fun for everybody after this week.
I also want to channel my high school coach here and say that even if they know what's coming, they still have to find a way to stop it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what my high school coach used to always say when I would run scout team offense sometimes against the defense. No, like, listen, Kevin, to sort of prove himself, right? Sure. He's supposed to be this mastermind play caller. Okay, so what do you do when you have a fourth and short? And Mike Vrabel's like, hey, I know it's going to be one of these 5 plays because this is what Kevin likes to run. Mm-hmm. You're going to do something different. You're going to sort of dig into the bag of tricks. You're going to sort of call a different thing that he hasn't seen before. I think that's a good test for Kevin to sort of prove that he is that coach. So I think all of this can be a positive in a way. I don't know that it has to be. I don't necessarily think it's some massive advantage for Vrabel that he knows what's coming. I don't know that this offense gives. I don't know if there's anything about this offense that like gives you an advantage anyway. I think it's like the Browns always kind of go into these games knowing it's going to be a struggle for us offensively. But I do think that there's some truth to the idea that like there will be pretty vocal conversation during the bye week if this game gets ugly. I do buy into that 100%.
What has been cool is all week long, for Vrabel and for the Patriots, they went into last week playing the Titans and being like, hey, big revenge game. Like, hey, the Titans fired him, like, all that stuff. They went into it. And then obviously, even in the post-game locker room and stuff, it felt like, and it looked like Vrabel had a little bit more personal, that came out of that game. What I think's been really cool outside of football this week is, every time any player's been asked about Vrabel or anytime Kevin's been asked about Vrabel, they talk like very glowingly about him. Like, I think it's very clear that, Stefanski and Vrabel have like a great friendship outside of football, which I think is pretty cool. And I do think that, with Vrabes being out last year and Kevin giving him the opportunity to come and learn and do all that stuff last year, I think it's pretty cool. Now, you throw all that stuff out the window on Sunday afternoon at 1:00, but I do think that, I don't know, maybe I'm weird or maybe I'm, I look too much into it, but I think that part's pretty neat that those two do have what feels like a real and genuine mutual respect for each other.
I agree with that. It's a cool sort of side story, and it's clear that they both do have a lot of respect for each other, and the way that like Mike talks about him and he talks about Mike, and other guys in this roster talking about Mike Vrabel too. I think that's pretty evident. I will say this, and obviously this was a different coach because it was Bill Belichick, but since the team returned in 1999, the Browns have only beaten the Patriots twice, and their last win against the Patriots came in 2010. 34-14, they beat them.
Who was the player of the game? Trivia question. Who was the player of the game?
They have lost 5 straight since then. Again, it's Bill Belichick. It's different, but that's what I mean by like sometimes these games end up being like blowouts, right? Like sometimes we see that the Browns struggle against this New England team. And again, history says that that's the case. It doesn't have to mean that doesn't have to mean anything for this matchup specifically this week. But there's always kind of been like a weird little brother type thing there. And some of that I think was Belichick trying to like run up the score on you. But the Browns got outscored pretty significantly in like most of these matchups, which is why I sort of bring up the blowout idea because it could happen. What'd you ask? Who the player of the game was?
Who the player of the game was in 2010? Think about it.
Brian Hoyer?
No, Peyton Hillis. He ran for like 700 yards. He was like running through people.
Yeah, that's right.
That was like prime Peyton Hillis. I think he may have been on the cover of Madden, or maybe the next year.
He was on the cover of Madden. I remember that.
It was insane. And
that was the year they did like the fan vote thing, and it was like people just voted for him to be like stupid about it. They were like, let's just vote for Peyton Hillis, the most random person that could be on the cover, and then he won. There's no way Madden thought that was going to happen.
He rushed for like 2 million yards that year. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. The one that sticks out to you is, the last time they were in Gillette, it was the Baker and OBJ and Jarvis and all those guys, and they went and got just their stuff. They just got rocked. And I remember it was a nasty day, and the game was never even close. And Baker struggled in that game, and
they lost by the way to the quarterback that's currently the Browns practice squad quarterback. By the way,
Bailey Zappi, you're right, dude.
It was his career game, 309 yards and 2 touchdowns he had.
That one was in Cleveland, wasn't it?
Yes, that was in Cleveland.
I'm thinking of the one that was in Gillette, and it was like
2021, 45-7.
Yes, where we got crushed in that one too.
Yeah, Baker had 73 yards passing in that game. He got hurt though. It looks like because
they should have kept him. They should have kept him.
Baker. We're doing this. We're doing this now.
Nope,
we're taking a Patriots Browns matchup and talking about Baker somehow, man.
No, sorry,
you're just chomping at the bit for 2026 schedule to come out so you can find out when the Browns play the Buccaneers, and then
I'm busy that week.
Baker.
I'm busy that week.
My
computer's not.
Busy talking about Baker Mayfield. Anyway, he might be an MVP by then.
Not after Monday night. No, not after.
That was a bad game. Yeah. Anyway, listen, I there's a lot to get into still with this matchup, and I think I kind of want to start with the fact that the Patriots have one of the best run defenses in football. And I think this actually creates an interesting situation for the Browns offensively, because we know they want to establish the run. We know that that's their strength. We know Quinshawn is amazing. Joel Bitonio gets asked pretty much every week, like, does he remind you of Nick Chubb at this point? And he obviously just did something last week that Nick Chubb was the most recent player to do by scoring 3 rushing touchdowns in a single game. So he's doing some impressive things. We know Quinshawn's awesome. But at the same time, the Patriots' run defense is so good.
Yeah.
I don't know what sort of momentum they're going to be able to build in the ground game. I think they're going to try to stick with it for a while. I think they're going to try to get that thing rolling. But I also think Kevin Stefanski, as we even saw in Pittsburgh, like he's going to get to a point where he's like, all right, we're going to have to air it out. And that's why I think, because conversely, the Patriots' pass defense is one of the worst in football. That is where teams are having success against them. And so as much as I've kind of gone through these first 3 starts for Dillon, and I felt like we didn't maybe have the clearest picture of who he is. I think the Vikings game was a weird scenario. You're going overseas, weird week because you don't get the 3 full practices. One of those games was like a walkthrough, or one of those days was like a walkthrough. You come back, you get Pittsburgh, you're under duress. Mm-hmm. Almost every single play, it seems like. It's like, how much can you really assess from that? And then this past week, the game plan just kind of called for heavy dose of run, just manage the offense and don't make any big mistakes. And he did that. This is the first game, though, I feel like the weather's supposed to not be a factor. New England doesn't have like an elite pass rush, but they got some guys that can make some plays. Barmore's in the interior is pretty good. Like, they have some playmakers, but it's not something that you're like worried about with the Steelers, who just come in like waves at you. And their secondary is susceptible. So I think this is the game that we're going to get to evaluate Dillon truly. And I think it's the game that Dillon, frankly, is going to have to make some plays for this team to win the action, to come away with a victory. And that's, I think, the biggest thing we're waiting to see is like when things are tight, when you need a play, can he make that big throw? Can he push the ball downfield, which is something he hasn't done yet? Can he take some risks at times? Because, listen, it's great that he protects the football. You can win a lot of games as like a game manager, protect the football type of guy in this league. But at some point, like, if you're going to be good, if you're going to help the offense be successful, and if they're going to win because of you, like, you have to be able to push the ball and take some shots at times, even if it's a little bit risky. And I don't know that Dillon's very risk averse, but I think you're going to have to see some of that in this game if the Browns are going to come away with a win. And that's why I think is one of the bigger storylines going into this matchup on Sunday.
Well, dude, I think you made a really good point there about, if you don't turn the football over and you manage games, you can win in the NFL. I think these first 3 games are a great example of you beat teams you're supposed to beat. With playing that play style, you'll win games you're supposed to win, and you'll lose games you're supposed to lose. You're never going to do the opposite. You'll never beat a team that you're supposed to lose to by just taking care of the football. And yeah, I mean, I am a big Dillon Gabriel fan. I think that, what he's done to this point has been, like, I would say solid. He hasn't been great for sure. There's a lot of film out there on Twitter that you'll scroll past, and he did miss probably 3 touchdown passes last week. But I come from the mindset of, hey, he protected the football. He did what he needed to do. His counterpart is the perfect example of what could go wrong if you don't protect the football. And he got blown out, right? Dillon didn't have to do a whole lot, and they won that game by 20 whatever points, 25 points, which I thought is winning football games. Now, this is an opportunity against the Patriots where you're not supposed to win the football game. I believe the Browns are touchdown dogs, or maybe 7.5 points or 6.5.
I saw 7 initially, but it might be 7.5 now. Yes.
It might be 7.5. It's somewhere in that range. Yeah, you're not supposed to win this football game. Guess how you do that? You have to take risks. Like, you're going to have to push the ball down the field. You can't play scared. And like you said, all the reasons why you laid out that why this is a perfect game for us to see that this week is why it's a perfect time for it. This could be this is a turning point, it feels like, for me. It is either going to be, hey, Dillon he's going to show us something and they go and beat the Patriots because he played really well, or hey, he played really scared and they lost by 2 touchdowns. And and then you'll know, hey, he's a good backup. And I think he could be a really good backup. Never, protect the football, do whatever he needs to do, but he's never going to take those chances. And this Sunday could be a really awesome opportunity for us as fans to see what he can do, and for the Browns in general to see what he can do.
Well, let's face it, with the bye week looming, it's going to be a game that people are reflecting on heavily in terms of Gabriel's performance anyway, because we know there's another rookie quarterback on this team that people want to see at some point. And if he struggles, it's going to be like the 2 things we'll talk about. If this game's like a terrible game, if it goes poorly and the Browns get blown out, the 2 things we'll be talking about are job security for the guys at the top of this regime. Andrew Berry maybe talks. He's supposed to talk, I think, at some point next week. So there'll be some storyline in there. And then it'll be, when is Shedeur going to play? And should they move to Shedeur after the bye week? And they give him some time to sort of get himself up to speed, because we've seen enough from Dillon Gabriel. I will say this, we're on the record right now. I don't think they make a switch to Shedeur until, like, at the latest, late November. Yeah. I think if they were going to move to Dillon as early as they did, I think you had to do that knowing, like, we're going to be committed to this and give this thing an actual shot for a little while here before we just pivot again. Because if you teeter-totter back and forth between the 2 guys, that just kills both their confidence. Like, you can't do that. Yeah. So I think when they made the switch from Flacco to Gabriel, I think that was done with the idea that, like, he's going to get a pretty long leash here to see what he can do. And then, yeah, when the season's like totally out of reach, which is probably the direction it's trending at some point here, that's when you say, okay, let's see what Shedeur can do for like the last like 5 games or whatever, and you kind of go from there. But yeah. I think Shedeur is going to play at some point, but I still think even during the bye week, if Gabriel struggles again, I think it'll still be a little bit too early before they actually pull the plug and make that switch.
So here's a question for you, and this is very curious. We didn't talk about this pre-show, so this is like a real question for you. I'm seeing a lot of like reports out of the building that like Shedeur and Dillon are actually like fairly close, and they're like kind of in it. You're there every day. Do you see evidence of that? Because some people you see like they try to pin these two against each other, and from everything that's starting to kind of surface, it does feel like they're kind of fighting the same battle and doing it together as decent teammates, as decent as they could.
Yeah, I don't know that I've like watched them intently like interact, but on the football field, you definitely see them like when the quarterbacks are all together, talking, chatting. Seems like they're having a pretty cordial conversations and laughing and what teammates would do. So, I don't know. Everyone tries to make every little thing that, especially Dillon says, into some storyline about how he hates Shedeur Sanders.
Do you think
we all remember the entertainers versus competitors quote, which was about the media, not about Shedeur. But people take that stuff and run with it. Fine. I don't think there's any like ill will there. I think they understand sort of their respective situations, and I think it's part of the competitive balance of it. Like you wanna win, you want to be the starter, but I don't think there's like any ill will there either. So. I don't know. I don't get the sense that they don't like get along, but I know outside looking in, people will try to say and interpret anything that they want to interpret. So.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is there's a really good clip from Sunday. So it was from the game rewatch or whatever on YouTube, where it was like they went on a scoring drive and Dillon came off the sidelines, and the first guy to get to him was Shedeur, and they gave like a big hug and like the whole thing. Which like,
well, and I think Shedeur's like he's been pretty open about like especially when Snoop Huntley was here during training camp. Like Snoop sort of helped him wrap his head around being a backup and just supporting the starter, right? Like, because he hasn't had to do that throughout his career. Everywhere he's basically been a starter. And so it was a new experience for him, but he had some people sort of direct him towards that. And I think that he's just trying to be the best teammate he can be, from my estimation.
Which is cool. And I've obviously never been at this level, but I've been in 3 straight quarterback competitions, and like, it takes a real guy to be the backup and to be cool to the starter, because especially those guys being the same age, like in your heart of hearts that they both want to be on that field, and they know there's only one quarterback to do that. So I always think that's pretty cool. From Shedeur, at least the stuff that you're hearing from it, and you just hope that Dillon can go out there and spin it, man, because while the Browns are touchdown dogs this week, this does feel like a game that if they do it the right way, they're not going to win by 20 in this game, but if they go out the right way, they protect the football. He takes chances. He connects on some of those chances. You're going to need a big one out of Jerry. You're probably going to want David to have a big game. You're going to need to be able to find creases in the run game. But there's a world where the Browns keep this close and are in it there towards the end of the football game. And that's what you want, because those games, we've seen a couple of them. Those games in the NFL are won and lost on the margins. And if you can keep it close, you're going to have a chance there at the end, which I think can be pretty cool.
Yeah, by the way, you mentioned David Njoku. The last 2 days of practice, he was limited for the Browns. So I think there's optimism there that he'll be ready to go. It sounds like Jack Conklin is going to be ready to go. He was a full participant on Thursday, so that's a good step in the right direction for him. But like getting this offense back healthy and giving him his full arsenal of weapons, I think would be huge. And I think we'll leave this game Sunday feeling like it's the first chance we really get to sit there and say Dillon Gabriel's this or Dillon Gabriel's that, and have more like definitive ideas of who he could be. So I'm looking forward to being able to have that conversation. I'm sure others are as well. Let's go to the defensive side, because there's another guy that we need to talk about who is definitively having a tremendous season and showing his worth, and that's Grant Delpit. It has kind of been like this. It feels like this has been like the week of Grant Delpit. He won Special Teams Player of the Week for his great play, knocking the ball out on the Dolphins kickoff return that led to a touchdown for the Browns. And then it's like ever since then, it's just been us asking questions about like, what do you think about Grant? How do you feel about Grant? What type of teammate is Grant? and guys have been so gracious and giving us answers that just kind of talk about who he is as a player in the locker room, on the field. What I think is great with Grant is you can tell he's one of those guys that's like, I'll just do whatever I need to help the team win. That's my focus. That's my goal. And you see that playing out on the field. And I honestly think, like, as much as Miles is kind of a force for the Browns and an important piece in terms of like what he brings to the table and how important he is to the defense. Teams are constantly trying to find him and scheme against him. I think Grant is
the leader of football team.
I don't want to put him in like the stratosphere of Myles Garrett, because Myles Garrett is one of the greatest players to ever play this game. But I still think from like a standpoint of like the dynamics of the team, he is probably equally as important, because the way he plays, guys feed off of it. He's got this great energy about him. Jim Schwartz said on Thursday that a couple years ago when Grant signed his contract extension, he basically told Grant, like, I want the defense to play like your personality, which is, I think, a pretty big compliment there. So like it's great to see a player like that thriving. And this is one of those guys who, we talk about Andrew Berry missing on a lot of picks. This is one of those guys that it certainly seems like is, especially as his career has gone on, year 6 here for him, has gotten better and does seem to be, standing out and becoming something of like a core member of this defense moving forward.
Yeah, you know what I really love about Grant, and I want to be sure I say this the right way, because I have a thought in mind, and I've been kind of chewing on it for a while. But he comes from that incredible LSU team that had Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Joe Burrow and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Patrick Queen and all those guys, and he was part of that team. And he gets
Ed Orgeron
and Ed O. The Go Tigers. Ray Baker. You don't respect Ray Baker, you'll make yes. But he comes from that team of just greats, and they win the national title. And then obviously, Jamar and Justin like have created this like aura of their own, where Justin's walking around with the bling and all the stuff, and they got the gritty, and they're like the faces of the NFL. And then Grant, in a loving way, gets drafted to Cleveland, and gets drafted to a team that he's been to the playoffs twice, and he's had more losing than winning. But it's just, I don't know why I find it so cool that he's so bought in to being a Cleveland Brown. And like you talk about him in the same breath as Myles Garrett. I think it's totally fair, and not from a skill perspective, but from a leadership perspective. Like, you don't get to watch it on TV because you're there every day or every week. Every time there's a tackle made, 9 is somewhere. 9 is close. It's in 9's orbit. And, there was 2 plays on Sunday that I thought were like super cool. Carson Schwarzenegger, or it was the sack that Grant had on Tua on that rollout. The first guy there was Carson Schwarzenegger, and they had their little dance, right? They had their little handshake, and they did this like little Michael Jackson looking dance. And then another play, Grant was in the backfield, and the guy dancing with him after the play was Mason Graham. And you're like, he's got these 2 rookies who he just met a couple months ago. He's got them playing with this nasty personality. They're having fun. They're doing all the right things. And it's all because of number 9. Like, it's all because number 9 is like leading the way for them. I don't know. I just find Grant to be, this could be a guy who played his first contract and then got the heck out of Cleveland, because he can see what his old teammates did, and Joe Burrow's Joe Cool, and Jamar's this, and Justin's that, and all these guys have found so much success. But instead, he's like bought into Cleveland. He wants to make this a winner, and he's doing everything in his power to do that. And I don't know. I find it really cool, and excited for him that he's having such an unbelievable season this year and doing whatever it takes for this Browns team to win.
Yeah, listen, I admire Grant's attitude and approach. The fact that he's got 2 coaches talking about how unselfish he is, and like Bubba just like gushing about his willingness as a starter to play special teams and contribute on that in that phase of the game, and how it rubs off on other players and guys pick up on that, I think is huge. I also think too, like, Jim uses him now in so many unique ways, and that's why I think like the Miles, him being in the conversation with Miles is so I think worth it or fair, because not in terms of like talent maybe, but like Miles also gets used in a lot of different ways, right? Like, he lines up in different spots, as we saw against the Dolphins. Well, same thing with Grant. Like, Grant sometimes comes down, he's showing simulated pressure. Sometimes he comes, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes Jim talked about it, like sometimes he's an extra backer when you're in like a nickel package and you have a couple extra safeties out there. Like he's so unique and he's so versatile that he gives this defense like another element of stuff that they can do, and that's huge. So yeah, listen, like Grant's been having a great season. He's probably in line to be a Pro Bowler at the least. I know Alex Wright said he thinks he's going to be an All-Pro, so I'm sure he's got some, there's maybe a chance he could do something like that too. But yeah, it's cool to see a player sort of come along and be another important piece of this defense. And as much as we highlight that side of the ball, I think Grant's a big part of what they do and what they do well, frankly.
Yeah. Another guy that I've just in 3 weeks, become a huge fan of is Tyson Campbell. Like this dude, just listening to him talk and like he was on with Andrew Siciliano today talking about him chasing down Devon Chain up the sidelines there, who's like the fastest guy in the NFL. And Tyson showed everybody that he's got elite speed, and then he has a pick 6 and the first touchdown, and he's playing really good. And he's played like over 100 snaps already for the Browns. And he's like, yeah, like I love it. And he's found this like sense of rebirth, which is really cool, especially since he was coming from a team that was 4-1 when they traded him to a team that was 1-4 when they got him. And it's a little bit different of a scenario, but he's also come in and just like totally bought in. And like, I don't know. I just feel like whatever's going on the defensive side of the football is it's good. There's a youth movement going on over there with Schlesinger and Ronnie Hickman and Mason Graham. And then there's this like level of excitement that they're playing with, which is, it's energizing. I don't know. It's energizing to watch. And it's a lot of fun. I love what's going on in that defense.
Yeah, I mean, I also think too, like a side part of this is just how great the rookie class has been just in general. Yeah. Starting with Schlesinger, who's obviously in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year, I think at this point. But Mason Graham, I know you don't notice a lot of him on the stat sheet. And I think there's been some growing pains for him at times. Like you're going against other guys in the trenches that sometimes are just better than you, and you're sort of figuring it out and learning some of the nuances of how to play the position. But like that whole group gives this team a lot of hope for the future on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
And maybe one of these quarterbacks emerges too as something for the franchise moving forward, and that makes it even more exciting. But yeah, kind of, the dynamics between some of these guys, some of these veterans, and Delpit sort of entering that conversation of guys that we maybe haven't talked about enough, I think is good. But also having that mix of the youth, like this, that's exactly what you were hoping to get.
Yeah.
If you're Andrew Berry this year, right, was see some of these other guys you drafted come along, see some of these veterans that play important roles for you, continue to do that, but mixing in some rookies. I mean, I'm just. It's crazy. Like they are rookies and we talk about them like rookies, but how well they're playing and how it's just kind of like ho hum at this point. Like you just kind of expect it and you're like, yeah, they're rookies, but they're so important to the success of this team. And as much as like this roster's in a bad spot just overall because of some of the other decisions that were made previously, I think it's a unique thing that you have a rookie class that's this good that sort of, projects out to be the future core of this team. And that the hope is that those guys are at the forefront of your next opportunity to, make playoff runs, deep playoff runs and have those types of successes.
I would even add too, just like quickly, like, look at this roster reconstruction right now. You found in this offseason, you found a leader, a starter level talent at the defensive line in Mason Graham. You've gotten a starter level talent at the linebacker position in Carson Schlesinger. You got a starter level talent on a 4-year contract in Tyson Campbell in the secondary. You have Ronnie Hickman still back there in the secondary. Obviously, he didn't come with this class. So, a new guy. And then on the offense side of the ball, you got a starter level talent, 2 of them at the running back position in Sampson and Judkins, and then at the tight end position, you got a starter level talent there. So it's like, okay, out of all the positions, you got 5 out of the 8 position groups. You nailed on somebody, which is positive. Now you got to keep going, right? Now the next position group is wide receiver and offensive line, and then from there you continue to build that thing out. But I don't know why I feel it this way. I definitely in the vast minority, but I think this roster is closer than it is far away from being a competitive group. It's just the positions are high leverage ones that they still need. It's the wide receiver and it's the offensive line, but I think that there are one or two right decisions away from being a very, very, very strong roster, and being back to that. But that's a little bit more bigger picture.
No,
I think
it's a fair point. I think your point on like you're maybe a few plays away from being a more competitive roster is fair, or a few more decisions away from that. But they got to make the right decisions.
Got to make the right ones, right?
That's the key thing this offseason. Real quick, Megs, who's the player that you think needs to have a big game on Sunday for the Browns to win?
Whose name is not Dillon Gabriel.
I mean, it could be Dillon if you want to be Dillon, but
we already talked about Dillon, so I think we covered the Dillon category there. I saw something today. A guy you do another show with, Lance Riesland, did a really good. If you don't follow him on Twitter, I highly recommend it. But an area that the Browns can dominate and change the football game is between the Patriots guards. Their left guard, right guard, and center are their weak points on their offense. And a strength of the Cleveland Browns defense is the interior of their defensive line and at the linebacker position. If they can win that area, if the Browns can do that, that stops the run and that makes Drake May really uncomfortable. And I think that for me, that's where I'll have my eyes on. If the Browns can win that spot of the field, that's Malik Collins, that's Mason Graham, that's the guys in the middle. That's where I think the Browns can get a big advantage, and really flip the game around and make the whole goal on Sunday is to make Drake May's life really uncomfortable. And I think if they start there, they're going to find a lot of success.
I'm going to look at the tight ends here, and I'm going to say I think Harold Fannin and David Njoku both have to have big games. It can't just be one or the other.
It's be both.
Gabriel's missed Njoku a bunch in like wide open, streaking down the field at times already this year. He's got to be able to hit him on those throws. He's got to go through his progressions and get to Njoku because there's some plays being left on the field that he can make and that I think are going to be pivotal to winning a game like this. So I think those tight ends are going to sort of be the safety nets for Gabriel, or should be. And I think if he's able to utilize those guys on a day we just talked about, like was going to be an important one for them winning this game is if Gabriel plays well. I think he's going to need those tight ends to also sort of be there to lift him up and play well. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for our latest episode of the oh, man.
Get it out. Get one of your million
Too many shows all at once for the Browns Roundtable podcast here that we do each and every single week. As a reminder, head to the link below, roundtable.io/sports/NFL/Browns, which is apparently going to be shortened here at some point soon. So, We'll have the new one on the scroll for you as soon as that happens. And also subscribe to this very channel. If you haven't done so already, make sure that we're your go-to spot for
tons of good content. Spencer doesn't give himself enough credit. He runs around on game days, runs around during the practice week, and fills this channel up with a bunch of good content. So make sure you're checking it all out.
I appreciate that, Megs. As Megs alluded to, though, you can keep on following along with all things Cleveland Browns with the Cleveland Browns Roundtable.